1. This happened to me when I was 16 or 17. I am now a 23-year-old male. Just for reference, this was before any of my friends or I touched alcohol or weed. We grew up in a very religious community, so we were completely sober for every day at that point in our lives. This story involves myself and two of my male friends, Dan and Kevin. Kevin is a year older than us. Because of this, he was already in his first year of college. The college he went to was, and is, a fairly popular choice for kids from our high school to go to. It's in quite a small town that, before the college was there, everyone knew each other's names. It has since grown with the influx of students and small families, but still remained a fairly quiet, small town. One bar, one main street that stretched for maybe 10 miles. And that was it for downtown. Myself, Dan, and Kevin were at the time in a band together. And when we weren't playing music, we were riding our longboards. On the day this occurred, Dan and I planned to go visit Kevin, go longboarding, and take pictures for an album cover. So we pack up our boards and camera, and head out on the hour drive to the university. We arrive with no trouble, and spend the first few hours just messing around in Kevin's dorm room. We were still in high school, so not the most mature kids. I put on every shirt in my friend's closet, literally about 30, and tried walking around campus with my friends laughing our asses off. You know, normal teenager stuff. After we were done fooling around, we decided to go take pictures as the sun was finally getting low enough for that golden hour in the day for pictures. We rode for a couple of hours, and we're exploring new roads, trying to find the perfect one with a nice view. We finally found it, and quickly jump on our boards, and got some good pictures in. At this point, the sun was beginning to set, so we were debating on heading back, when we saw a park in the distance, so we decided to go check it out. Best decision we had made. We were the only car there, and the only people there. The park was small and deserted at this hour, but well maintained. It has smooth, winding concrete paths that we happily grabbed our boards and started riding. After about an hour, it was starting to get pretty dark. There were a couple lamps around, emanating a white light that only travelled a few feet. We could not see very well and decided not to ride in the dark and risk injury. On our way back to the car, we passed something that we passed on the way in. A giant concrete structure. It was circular and about 10 feet off the ground, about 40 or 50 feet wide. Our teen minds quickly took this in and decided we must conquer whatever this structure is. It had a foot-wide lip that stuck out about a foot around the top, so trying to climb was more difficult because your body would swing in under the lip. We walk around it, hoping to find a hill or rock near that would make this 10-foot-high wall not as daunting to climb. What we can see from a hill further back is that the top is sealed and flat, so we continue finding a way to scale this beast. I can't remember exactly how we managed to get on top. I know it took the three of us about 15 minutes to do so, hoisting and pushing each other to the top. Eventually we made it, and all laid down panting, but feeling successful. The view from atop this, whatever it is, I don't actually know, was astounding. We could see the whole valley, and with minimal lights around many stars illuminated in the city. Our main source of light was coming from the moon, directly in front of us to the west. After maybe 20 minutes of us laying and staring, we hear a light rustle coming from down on the ground. Something was definitely moving. A deer. I vocalized to my friends. They both nodded in agreement and went back to their stargazing. A few more rustles at different spots around this structure, and my curiosity is starting to peak. I hop up and walk to the far side where the noises are coming from. I peek over the edge, the moonlight giving me just enough light to make out grass and rocks. Nothing was down there. I walked all the way around the edge looking for deer, skunks, raccoons. I don't really know. just anything that could be making this noise, but turn up empty-handed. I figured whatever animal it was must have scurried off when it heard me coming. I went back to Dan and Kevin, still laying down, to report my results. I couldn't find anything. I told them. They looked at me curiously, but not alarmingly. Obviously, whatever it was scampered off as it heard me walking. I sat back down with them. Not even a minute later, there is that same rustling. Only this time it was moving slow and methodically around the structure. I could feel my heart beat increasing. As I glanced over to Dan and Kevin, they had the same wide-eyed look as me. We didn't have to say anything to each other to know. This wasn't an animal walking. It was footsteps. Slow crunches of leaves continued around us, passing by our heads and wrapping around. I glanced over to my left and see our car parked about 200 feet away. The only car in the lot. The only lamp in the parking lot directly over the car. It was getting very dark now, to the point where we almost couldn't see the ground over the side. Only the moon, casting its pale glow on the cold concrete we were laying on. Too scared to move, hoping these noises would drift off into the distance. The footsteps continued until it reached the far side, where they had first begun. The same place I went to check a few minutes prior. From what we could tell, it seemed like one person, so we felt okay there being 3 of us, with boards we could use as weapons. Also, this thing we were on is tall. If I wasn't with my friends, I wouldn't have been able to scale this. That made us feel a bit safer. How would this person get up here alone? It had been about 5 minutes since we had heard the last crunch, and the anxiety was beginning to subside. In this time, we had also called out for anyone to identify themselves, in case they just didn't know we were even up here. Which was very possible since we hadn't been standing or talking much. But there was no answer. So we talked ourselves into believing it was just an animal. Only a few minutes later, I was still laying down whispering to Kevin about what he thinks we should do, thinking Dan is right next to him, but it's so dark I can hardly tell. We both agree if there's anything sketchy, we're bolting. We all ran in track and feel confident we could outrun a pursuer. Suddenly I hear Dan say, "Hey, what's up?" To my surprise, Dan is not laying next to Kevin. He is standing almost in the middle, about 10 feet in front of us, and turned away from us. What the fuck, I thought. "Dan, what are you doing?" I hissed, not wanting to make too much noise. He doesn't turn or acknowledge me. I turn to Kevin. I see panic start to flood his face. We turn back to Dan and see the silhouette of a figure standing about 10 feet in front of Dan, the moon behind him, shrouding his face in darkness. My blood ran cold. Dan was standing there. I wanted to go grab him, yell at him to run, but was frozen with fear to the ground. Suddenly, 2 more figures appear at either side of the first figure, all hiding in the darkness. The first figure made a few slow shuffles towards us and said, "Do you want to have some fun?" At this point, Dan looks back at us, the moon lighting our faces, and he can see the fear in our eyes. Who the fuck were these guys? How did they climb up so quickly and quietly? And what the hell kind of thing this is? Do you want to have some fun? To say to someone you just creeped out in the dark. I jump up and sprint for the side toward the parking lot and hear Kevin right behind me. We jump off the side and land with a thud, but no injuries. "Dan!" Kevin and I both scream and look back. Dan is still standing up there looking at them. I later learned he was paralyzed with fear and thought we were still behind him. Luckily, the second or third time we scream his name, we finally get his attention and he turned into a full sprint after us. We ran to the car as fast as we could, hoping nothing was behind us or worse, waiting for us. We all get to the car, fumbling, jump in, slam the doors, and speed off into the night. We were all still reeling from what just happened, and thankfully, we got out of the whole situation unscathed. I still think back to that night and can't remember every incident so clearly. So happy those guys didn't jump on Dan after we abandoned him. But hey, we were scared, shit happens. He understood. So creepy stalker guys with superhero climbing powers, let's not meet. Or have some fun. Ever. 2. The year is 2003. I am a 15-year-old boy and living in a small city. This is a place where everyone seems to know everyone. I am typically shy and often use the internet as a way to meet people. During this time, the instant messenger ICQ was still pretty popular amongst the teens in my area. I would often stay up late, adding new people and chatting them up. I would do this by searching by city and adding people I knew from school. This is how I met her. Her name was Sarah. We began chatting innocently enough, the normal, "Hey, what's up?" sort of deal. Now, Sarah was self-described 17-year-old girl. Short brown hair and nerdy. We hit it off pretty fast. We had so much in common, and I found it easy to open up to her. Although it was strange that I had never seen her in school. I go to the Christian school, explaining why I had never seen her. We continued chatting for some time, and I eventually give her my home phone number. We chat regularly over the phone until eventually she asks, "Would you like to hang out sometime?" Without hesitation, we make plans for me to go over to her house, hang out and watch movies. The day finally comes for us to hang out. I make my way across town to the address she gave me. It's a small apartment building. Slightly confused on how she and the rest of her family would fit in such a small apartment, I make my way upstairs. I knock, and I am immediately greeted at the door by a woman, maybe in her late 20s or early 30s. I knew this was Sarah, but she didn't look anything like she described. I was instantly weirded out, but followed her into her small one-bedroom apartment. I stupidly asked, "So, are your parents home?" She laughed. "No, it's just me here." I'm now sitting awkwardly on the couch. "Do you drink?" She's looking at me across the room. "Water," I joke. We both share an awkward laugh as she pours me a glass of wine. I never take a sip of it. She sits close to me after popping in a bootleg copy of Finding Nemo. My brother got this for me while it was still in theaters. He's like a hacker or something. She giggles. At this point, she is very close to me. I am uncomfortable, and being the weirdo I am, I shift to the floor. I'm now sitting on the floor with my back up against the couch. She then straddles me from behind. "You look so tense," she begins rubbing my back. "I'm really good at this. I can make you feel so good." I lean forward. "Thanks, but you don't need to do that. I'm fine." I explain that I should be going. She points to her bedroom. "You can stay the night." Never had a guy stay in my bed. She keeps making sexual advances, telling me how she hasn't had sex in so long, and she just wants to meet a nice guy like me. All the while, she keeps touching my arms and face. Now, at this point in my life, I was still a virgin, but this lady was not going to be the one to change that. I talk my way out of the situation and head home. The next few days, I get several messages telling me she misses me and she's sorry. Eventually, I cave and respond to one of her messages. I ask her why she lied and what her deal is. She tells me she has a hard time meeting friends, and she doesn't like people her own age. I feel bad, forgive her, and we make plans to talk in person. Here I am at my last encounter with Sarah. I ride my bike to her apartment. Once inside, I'm greeted not only by her, but her parents too. They introduce themselves. Finally, we get to meet Sarah's boyfriend, her dad jokes. We've heard so much about you. She's always going on about how great you are. Her mom follows up. In my head, I'm freaking out. I am not this girl's boyfriend. Sarah grabs my hand and laces our fingers. She looks so happy. Her parents are just stopping over to pick something up, and were actually on their way out when I showed up. If I was going to get out of here, now would be the chance. I grab the box her mom was about to pick up. I'll take that down for you. Her mom smiles. You're a keeper. I help her parents load the box in their SUV and hop on my bike. I was just swinging by to say hi. I should probably get home. Sarah wraps her arms around me and kisses my cheek. I ride home confused and plan on never talking to that girl again. She dropped me a few messages I never responded to. She called the landline a few times, but we never spoke. I don't know whatever happened to her. I don't know why her parents didn't question my age, or if they were just okay with it. 3. Hi. These incidents took place over the course of 4 to 5 months, when I was in 9th grade, aka ages 14 to 15. For reference, I'm a guy. This might be lengthy, but it was a weird, crazy time of my life. Over the summer, my family and I had moved to a new state on the other side of the country, so I knew no one. I was pretty shy and quiet with people I didn't know, so making friends wasn't easy. I was nervous about starting high school, let alone in completely unfamiliar territory. However, I was feeling excited about taking art. I ended up meeting a few other kids in my class who I became good friends with over time, including a girl I'll call Amy. Amy was a very pretty girl who was charming and made me feel at ease. I didn't have very high self-esteem and could struggle with keeping conversations going, but Amy was easy to talk to. She seemed interested in me, and I was over the moon. I eventually asked her to be my girlfriend, and she said yes. Things were fine at first, but over the next month or so, some things about Amy seemed a bit weird. She started calling and texting me very frequently, always making small talk at first, like, "Hey, what's up? What are you doing?" Then asking if I was there, why I am ignoring her. She'd often call me 15 to 20 times in a row while I was doing homework, something with my family, etc. I was eventually a bit annoyed, but she was my first girlfriend, and I wasn't a very assertive or confident person. Amy started asking me about members of my family and their interests, like, how's Allison doing? Any soccer tournaments coming up? I told her I had 2 sisters, but I didn't get along with my sisters and knew that I had never mentioned their names, much about them, so I was confused. Amy tried to play it off as me just forgetting that I mentioned it. Amy would tell me elaborate, crazy stories that I knew were lies, like how her mom was a singer who's best friends with Morgan Freeman and performed regularly at his nightclubs in Tennessee, and how Morgan let Amy do karaoke with him, or her Uncle Lanny, who she claimed lived in Alaska and was a wolverine hunter. Amy was generally very vague about her personal family life, her background, but talked extensively about her mom and Uncle Lanny. Just weird, tall tales. She also claimed that she lived in a multi-million-dollar mansion on the lake. I still liked Amy, and honestly just tried to dismiss most of this stuff. Amy was showing a clingy pattern at first, but suddenly, she started this seemingly week-on, week-off thing. She'd pretty much completely ignore me for a week or so, then would become clingy, constantly calling my cell phone. Sometimes, Amy started trying to tell me how to act, that I shouldn't wear certain things, that I shouldn't tell certain people that she was my girlfriend. During the clingy phases, Amy would occasionally get uncomfortably pushy, grabbing me under the table at lunch, loudly asking me very overtly sexual questions about what I'd want to do with her. That part was especially bad. I'd ask her to stop, She would usually just say that she is showing me that she loves me. A few times while I was watching my siblings, our house phone rang. I'd answer, and the person hung up. Called back a few times, same thing would happen. Later on I knew it was Amy, though I never gave her my home phone number. Only my cell. I was getting annoyed with Amy at a certain point. I was kinda ambivalent because, as I said, I was the shy new boy, and she was a beautiful, smart girl who seemed to like me. But it sucked, not knowing whether I was going to get slightly nice but obsessive Amy or Ice Queen Amy. I eventually broke up with her, over text. Yeah, she, surprisingly, did not blow up. Things were relatively quiet for a few weeks, until I got a long stream of consciousness text from Amy. She talked about what an awful person I was, quoted random proverbs, how much she hated me, criticized pretty much every opinion I held. It was bizarre. Then one day, I was outside helping my mom with whatever it was. Amy suddenly showed up in our yard, acting like nothing was wrong, claiming that she was my friend from school. To be honest, I had not told my mom anything about Amy. I was afraid that my mom would tease me, grill me about it, and especially didn't want to tell her after the weird things started happening. Amy left, and my mom just thought she was a nice girl. Don't know how she knew where I lived. I don't believe that she lived near me, and I did not live in a suburban neighborhood. I lived in a pretty secluded area where cars rarely passed by my house, and if they did, they belonged to my neighbors. Not likely that she was just walking by. I was freaked out. The people I was previously friends with had basically shut me out after Amy. A few days after the weird yard thing, I woke up in the middle of the night. I'm a light sleeper, but I felt on edge, this weird sense of dread. I was scared. I sat upright in bed for a few minutes, when there was a thunk at my window. I waited a second, 2, 3 more thunks, like someone was throwing pebbles, small stones at the window. I felt like I knew it was her, but I opened one of the slats in the blinds and saw her standing in my yard. I wasn't sure if I should tell her myself to fuck off, if I should call the police, but I ended up briefly telling my mom that this girl she met was harassing me and is in our yard. My mom went out there and yelled at Amy, threatening to call the cops, and eventually she ran off. If there was a car waiting, I'm not sure. My mom wanted to contact Amy's parents, but I talked her out of it because I honestly just wanted nothing to do with this person. I started dating Amy in October, and at this point, it was almost March, after the text and rock throwing. When Amy actually showed up, she completely ignored me and no longer bothered me at school. I do know that she was getting into trouble a lot. I didn't hang out with my old friends anymore, like I said, but unfortunately, I had 3 classes with Amy. School ended with no more incidents, and I thought that the situation was over. It was now mid-July, and my mom and I just parked at a craft store, going to get some things. As we walked across the parking lot, I saw Amy and a woman who I assumed was her mother leaving the store. It happened pretty quickly, but I guess they saw us and came zooming over. Her mom proceeded to scream at me and my mom for about 45 seconds to a minute, using all kinds of profanity and certain offensive insults, telling my mom what a poor excuse for a mother she is, before getting into her car and peeling out of the parking lot. My mom, honestly, was completely shocked, and didn't in fact really react while it was happening. That was the last I heard of Amy. I heard that she ended up moving away a couple of months into 10th grade. Amy, you and your mother seemed very unhinged, and I hope that you do not treat anyone else like this. Hopefully you've gotten some help, and find some good friends, a good relationship at some point in your life, but let's not ever meet again. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 true scary stories episode 93. Thank you very much for all your feedback on the recent videos. Very kind responses, well, most of you, to the Comic-Con video. Very grateful for that. I'm always a bit nervous when I try something new, something a bit different. I'm never really sure how well it's going to be received. So it's always very gratifying when I see how well you guys take it. And most of you, if you don't enjoy it, are generally quite polite in your criticisms. That certainly encourages me to keep doing more themed videos as time goes on. I should probably start now if I'm going to do a Halloween video, just to make sure I can get stories in time. I'm actually cheating a little bit when I'm recording these. I've decided to give myself the weekend off, so I'm recording Saturday, Sundays and Mondays back to back. Who doesn't enjoy a little rest now and again? Recharge the batteries? Okay, with that in mind, I'm going to go start on a story called Young Foolishness, which will, oh dear, it was 29 days ago that was published, so I hope the person that shared it, what's their name? Conflicted Monkey. Hope they're still cool with me recording it. Okay, so I'm going to go do that. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.